What's the worst thing you can think of? This guy's probably done it and then said he didn't. I'm your host Yusuf, and these are the top 10 chilling things John Wayne Gacy has said. Make sure you subscribe and ring that bell to get notified whenever we upload a new video. Anyways, let's get the clown makeup. Also, side note, I appreciate all of our subscribers. Thank you very much.
Everybody from the neighborhood knew John Gacy.
I was clowning and appearing in at least 10, 15 parades.
Number 10, when he said that some of the identifications of his victims were wrong. I'm not interested in what the public thinks. My fight is in the courts. And while I have been fighting with the appeal, it has been an uphill battle because I am an unpopular cause. Too much public pressure, too much politics. To give me a hearing so that I can prove that the state withheld evidence favorable to me, that the identifications of some of the victims was wrong, and that my attorney was more concerned about book rights and how sensationally more the case could get, the higher the value of the book. Gacy alleges that his attorney only took his defense because he wanted the information about Gacy so that he could put it in a book. He is asking here for another hearing for his case, perhaps to reduce his sentence to something lighter. Gacy's sentence ended up in execution, as he was sentenced to capital punishment for his crimes. Gacy became a Democratic precinct captain in the Chicago suburbs in the 1970s, and in this capacity he met the wife of Jimmy Carter, Rosalind. There's a famous photo of Gacy with Carter, which she signed to John Gacy, best wishes, Rosalind Carter, Chicago, Vronsky. Someone said that this was a big part of the Democratic Party machine at the time, and Gacy was heavily involved, even acting as a marshal in a Polish parade. Number 9, when he said Jeffrey Dahmer was more insane than him. If Jeffrey Dahmer doesn't meet the legal test for insanity, God help the one that does meet it. It has to really be something. If Jeffrey Dahmer doesn't meet it, then nobody does. And for me, it's a psychological ploy to use. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't end up being legally insane. The reason why Jeffrey Dahmer's insanity defense was rejected is because the jury did not see clear and convincing evidence of how Jeffrey Dahmer's mental condition caused him to commit the crimes without understanding the wrongness of his actions. If you are wondering if Gacy himself met the legal test for insanity, here's a quote directly from an official law review from West Virginia University in 1984. Given the psychiatric evaluation of Gacy, neither a criminal sentence nor a program of treatment for a mentally disordered offender may be adequate or appropriate. The case suggests the need to consider the possibility of permanent isolation and incapacitation of dangerous persons who are not treatable nor rehabilitatable, nor properly subject to execution. In addition to becoming one of Netflix's most popular shows of the year with 500 million hours watched already, Dahmer is actually so popular that it's making an entirely separate serial executioner rise up Netflix's top 10 list. That would be the true crime docuseries Conversations with a Terminator, the John Wayne Gacy tapes, which is a 3-episode, 3-hour documentary that features details of Gacy's slaughters and interviews with the man himself. Number 8, when he was trying to convince the court that he was truly insane or had no knowledge of the crimes committed. No, I don't think that's possible. After 14 years under truth serum, had I committed the crime, I would have known it. There's got to be something that would click in my mind. I've had photos of 21 of the victims, and I've looked at them all over the years here, and I've never recognized any one of them.
The thing of it is, we took it a step further. We went into their backgrounds. I wanted to know where they were at, what schools they attended, who they hung out with, and what kind of activities they were into. And that's what we dug up on each one of the victims. But still, there is no association. None of them never worked for me. None of them, they never went to any places that I ever hung around, because I didn't hang around that many places unless you were involved in politics.
He's lying through his teeth right here. He wants the court to believe that he didn't recognize the victims at all, and thus he couldn't have committed the crimes, or that he was insane for not being able to remember that he committed the slaughters. Whatever he tried here, it failed for him, as we all know. John Wayne Gacy is obsessively fond of defending his innocence, which is imaginary. On March 12, 1980, he was convicted in Chicago of ending the lives of 33 guys. The removals took place between 1972 and 1978, when he was caught and arrested. No one else in America has ever been convicted of ending so many people. 27 of the bodies were buried in a crawl space beneath the house where Gacy lived, in a neighborhood out by O'Hare Airport. Number 7, when he created a conspiracy against the state of Illinois. If you're talking about the Summerdale house and the bodies found there, we feel that some of them passed of substance overdose, then were buried alive. Trouble is, the state never did toxicology on the victims, as they wouldn't fit their theory that they were all strangled. Even Dr. Stein says that the 13 passed of suffocation and 10 were left undetermined, which leads me to believe that they were not terminated the way the state wants you to believe. The state of Illinois had a running theory that Gacy strangled all of his victims, which Gacy denied vehemently. I'm not sure if he's denying the cause of execution for the 10 other victims to reduce his sentence or to say he's innocent. If you know, then let us know in the comments below. The case of John Wayne Gacy is particularly valuable in that it presents an opportunity to examine the functioning of the insanity defense in a trial where no other legal issues were before the jury. The defendant's confessions to police and their admission at trial, along with the location of the remains of victims, some located with the assistance of the defendant, effectively eliminated the alternative plea of not guilty. Number 6, when he said the public was brainwashed. Keep in mind, the public has been brainwashed, and nearly 80% of what is known about me is fantasy and self-serving theories of the state. But overall, I am an embarrassment of the justice system, because if I am right, then they are wrong, and the butchers are still out there. For political reasons, it would be better that I drop out of life. Then they could all say what a great job they've done, and nobody else would be pushing for the truth to come out.
People don't want to know the truth and the honesty of it. If they want to be convinced or brainwashed into what they believe, then fine, then go ahead and kill me. But vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, because you will have executed somebody that didn't commit the crime.
Another conspiracy from Mr. Gacy. At this point, he might really be insane, but it's better that he wasn't sentenced for insanity because this guy really did some awful things. When asked about his trial during an interview later, he dived deeper into the conspiracy. Okay, you sold a car to your employee Michael Rossi that belonged to one of the victims, John Syke. Yet you deny this, said the interviewer. Gacy replied, "That's true. This came out at trial too. Yet it's not true, and even the state knew this and covered it up." The Bureau of Scientific Services in Maywood, Illinois on March 27, 1979, a year before the trial. This report showed that the handwriting samples were taken from me, from John Syke, the victim, and from Michael Rossi, and they were compared to the motor vehicle title R1209194 and the other questionable vehicle transfer papers. The result of the findings was that all the names were forged by Michael Rossi, as it was all done in his handwriting. Yet at trial, even knowing this, the state told the jury that John Wayne Gacy did this. My defense attorney never objected to it because they thought it didn't harm my case. Number 5, when he explained why he marked the spot in the garage where some of the bodies were hidden. Yes, I marked the spot in the garage. When I was back at the house on December 22nd, they had asked me to. With all the rebuilding of the garage, which was the last area of concrete, in the last area where the concrete was poured, and they handed me an orange spray can and I put an X. That's it. An X over the spot in the corner of the garage where I thought the last area was poured. Now all of a sudden, Kunkel claims that I not only drew an X, but I put an O on top of it, where the head was, and made that X look like it was a stick figure, and that's not true. Gacy buried Butkovich's body under his garage. He then took the teen's car and left it in a parking lot with Butkovich's keys and wallet sitting out in the front seat. Butkovich's parents were convinced that Gacy was involved in the boy's disappearance and called police at least once a week for nearly 2 years, urging them to investigate Gacy. Had the police followed the Butkovich's instructions, the lives of at least 30 other young men and teenage boys could have been spared. Unfortunately for the victims, the cops hadn't put in any effort in finding the bodies. Number 4, when he talked about whether or not there was an odor in the Somerville house. This one's kinda gross. There was no smell. Over the years, other than when it rained, the musty odor was present. People were in and out of that house daily for years, and other than when it rained, there was no odor, and certainly not like what some of the books said. That's all fantasy. If that odor was there, somebody would have noticed it sooner.
29 bodies buried in that house of his on Summerdale, a crime of horrendous proportions. In the crawl space underneath, bodies covered with lime and encased in plastic, dug up a few days before Christmas and carried into the December cold, one after another after another.
When his second wife, Carol, whom he divorced in 1975, would complain about the smell emanating from beneath their home, he would chalk it up to some sewage issue, enlisting workers at his contracting company to spread hundreds of pounds of lime in the crawl space in an effort to conceal the stench. The stench was actually one of the main reasons he was caught, because his neighbors kept complaining about it. Number 3, when he explained that other people had keys to his rental house. Yes, that's true, but the house wasn't a home. Like what you go to a home to every night. The Summerdale house is rented to PDM contractors. There was 12 keys out to it, but that was never allowed to come out at the trial, as it would put doubt in the state's theory. They didn't want anybody to know that people had keys to the house. Plus the fact that I wasn't always at the house, so others used it just as much. And again, that wasn't brought out at the trial as it didn't fit the state's theory of the case that I committed all the crimes. If 11 people had access to the home, how come no one else complained about the smell? It's actually very strange in my opinion. Number 2, when he denied he ever confessed. That is what has been said in the media and at the trial. To this day, nobody has produced one. There is no written confession. There is no tape recorded confession. There is no police stenographer typed confession. It was in my appeal and the court refused to look at it and the state refused to answer it. If they had nothing to hide, I can't understand why they can't produce one. It's interesting that he says he never confessed when on December 22nd, 1978, John Wayne Gacy confessed to police to ending over 24 young men and burying their bodies under his suburban Chicago home. Maybe he was just joking when he confessed. Number 1, when he implied that he didn't work alone. It wasn't in the state's best interest to let the jury know. They said it would raise doubt that John Gacy acted alone. The defense attorneys didn't bring it out because it didn't go along with their insanity defense, showing others were involved. A lot came to light in John Wayne Gacy's trial. The garage where he kept the bodies of the victims, the implication of another person being involved, so much to follow and keep track of that it kind of gets convoluted. Well, at least we know that justice was indeed served. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and comment if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time on Crime Time. Crime Time. Crime Time, baby.